these tough restrictions are a very, very different tone to pretty much any Labour Prime Minister I can remember hearing from. And whether Keir Starmer believes the stuff he's saying, I don't know. But he does believe that if he doesn't say it, he's going to lose the next election.
When you look at previous quotes of Starmer, where he has been very open to the benefits that come with the migration of people into the country, the idea that this is just a simple thing saying, right, we're going to turn off the tap and British people will fill those jobs, well, good luck with that. Finding the people to do those jobs is going to be really difficult.
Today, this Labour government is shutting down the lab. The experiment is over. We will deliver what you've asked for time and again, and we will take back control of our borders.
That was Keir Starmer this morning, sounding like no UK Labour Prime Minister has ever sounded before. Closing down the lab, the experiment is over. He's talking about the end to the kind of immigration we're seeing right now.
But it did sound a lot like reform to many people. It could have been a Nigel Farage speech in some of the tone that was delivered. But is this practical, given the need to keep our care homes open and given the need to keep the crops picked in our fields? Welcome to the News Agents. It's John.
It's Emily.
So Keir Starmer was up bright and early this morning to deliver a speech on immigration, which we'll come to the tone in a minute, but it also in terms of policy was a fundamental shift on immigration so that the government can bring down the net migration numbers, which have at times kind of almost got to 1 million, and he wants to see a big reduction in that. And so for now, anyone coming into the country, instead of being here for 5 years before you can apply for citizenship, you'll have to spend 10 years here. There are going to be English language requirements, not only on the migrant who is coming into the country, but any kind of dependent who is coming in as well. There are also going to be kind of skills tariffs so that you get more high skilled workers and fewer unskilled workers. That begs a whole series of questions along the way as well.
Yeah, one of the really important ones is that care providers won't be able to hire workers from overseas anymore, and that skilled worker visas will require a university degree. In other words, they want everyone who comes in to be higher earners or higher skilled.
And more highly educated.
And so these tough restrictions basically are a very, very different tone to pretty much any Labour Prime Minister I can remember hearing from. And I don't think it's insignificant that Reform put the wind up them 10 days ago with their gains in that by-election in Runcorn and in the council elections as well. And if you listen to some of the language that Starmer is using, it kind of jumps off the page at you. It reminded me more of Theresa May in the old days after the Brexit referendum, talking about the somewheres and the anywheres, the people who had no real sense of home. Just listen to this.
Now, in a diverse nation like ours, and I celebrate that, these rules become even more important. Without them, we risk becoming an island of strangers, not a nation that walks forward together. So when you have an immigration system that seems almost designed to permit abuse, that encourages some businesses to bring in lower paid workers rather than invest in our young people, or simply one that is sold by politicians to the British people on an entirely false premise, then you're not championing growth, you're not championing justice, or however else people defend the status quo. You're actually contributing to the forces that are slowly pulling our country apart. So yes, I believe in this. I believe we need to reduce immigration significantly.
So you compared it to Theresa May. I mean, I heard Richard Tice, one of the kind of Reform MPs at Westminster, speaking approvingly of the language that Starmer was using. He so obviously went on to say we would do better. But I think that exposes the flank where Starmer feels he's got to go there, but leaves him exposed as well. If you've got Richard Tice speaking approvingly of what you're saying, you're going to upset an awful lot of Labour MPs along the way who think this is some kind of betrayal of Labour's core values to be doing this.
Yeah, look, I think the narrative of this is very clear, which is that the Conservative government's PMs, one after another, lost control of immigration. As you say, it peaked at more than 900,000 in 2023. And he wants to be the one saying, does it really take a Labour government to actually take back control? Words that we would never normally have expected to hear Starmer use. I think there is an irony, though, to some of the timing of this, because net migration was already falling. So if you look at the numbers, documented immigration has fallen by around a third, this is according to the FT, since Labour won election last July. And the Office for National Statistics is soon going to give us our first headline net migration figure covering that post-election period. And what the FT is quoting is 460,000 fewer visas were issued in 2024 than in 2023. So he's already, as it were, backing a horse that has seen migration drop significantly already, which I think calls into question why he needs the language to sound just so hardcore when he could actually be confident that this is something that's already happening and say, we need to get these numbers down because the Conservatives lost control of immigration, but we need to do it in a way that also allows the economy to grow. He's not saying that. He's not really addressing the care home workers situation. He's not really addressing the benefits that they would bring, that immigration can bring to the NHS. And I have to say that I sort of hear in this somebody at his back saying, go out there, probably Morgan McSweeney, who's very hardline on immigration, go out there and sound more like Farage. And whether Keir Starmer believes the stuff he's saying, I don't know. But he does believe that if he doesn't say it, he's going to lose the next election.
Well, I suppose there's a simple bit of politics in it that, you want to be the father of success. And
Yes.
if the net migration figures are coming down anyway, you
Get
can
your
then
speech out early.
get a policy out quickly so
Yeah.
I can say it's all down to me and it's not all down to the Tories. Because the last thing that Keir Starmer is going to do is stand up and say, I'd like to congratulate Rishi Sunak on the measures he put in place before the last election, which have now delivered this. He's never going to say that. So that's part of it. You go to the question of tone. And I do think there is a question of confidence of Keir Starmer that, look, Keir Starmer, when he became the Labour Party leader, was all for free movement, was part of the anti-Brexit campaign. He was a solid Remainer. To say I've always been this hawk on immigration doesn't bear scrutiny when you look at previous quotes of Starmer, where he has been very open to the benefits that come with the migration of people into the country.
Yeah.
And so I kind of think that shows a lack of a sort of certain brittleness that, when he was asked about this at the news conference today, he could have easily said, look, yeah, I've seen that the uncontrolled numbers that we've seen in the past 3 or 4 years have been a disaster for the kind of unity of this country, the ties that bind us together. This has to be addressed.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can go in and talk about control and contribution, i.e. we need to have these controls and we need to recognise the contribution. He has opted, certainly in this speech, just to talk about control. And the language of taking back control, the language of ending an experiment. I mean, the question of the lab and the experiment, as if this was.
Well, it sounds like Frankenstein's monster, doesn't it?
Exactly. I mean, I think that's what he's going for, isn't it? That there's only one party that can do it, and maybe you have to ask yourself, if you had to have a hardline immigration system from any party, would it be the party that traditionally veers towards compassion but is hardening up, or the party like Reform that traditionally veers towards a lack of compassion and probably incompetence when they actually get into power?
Look, the basic calculation is there are no votes to be lost in sounding tough on immigration right now.
Yeah.
And whilst there'll be people on the left of the Labour Party who will condemn him, he'll probably enjoy that, just as Tony Blair at times enjoyed it when the left said you're going too much towards the Conservatives. It helped him to make his argument that this was a change. And I think that Starmer is trying to signal that the Labour government is going to be really tough on some of these issues. Now, whether care homes will be able to function and whether crops will get picked from the fields, and whether, when we went to Clacton last summer, Emily, when, Farage launched his campaign, and you looked around the constituency and you thought, well, the pier would shut down, which is where he launched his campaign, if all the foreign workers left.
To be fair, that's what they told us, that they used to have a thriving hospitality industry, restaurants open, catering, all the rest of it, and that had now pretty much collapsed because they couldn't get workers in.
Exactly. And so the idea that this is just a simple thing saying, right, we're going to turn off the tap and British people will fill those jobs, well, good luck with that.
I mean, good luck with that, I suppose, doesn't answer the whole question, which is, do we want more of our jobs to be homegrown? Of course you do. But to start getting those results, you have to stop treating care work as if it was, filling up popcorn in a cinema. It shouldn't be seen as unskilled. It shouldn't be seen as unimportant. It should be seen as actually deeply important work that provides help for the most vulnerable people in society, right? So if you want to get people at home to do it, you have to pay more. We know that. You also have to actually treat it as a skill that people aspire to have, as opposed to saying, oh, we're taking away your benefits, go and work in a care home. I mean, that's not going to be great for anyone. If I had elderly parents that were going into a care home right now, I'd be absolutely terrified. I would be absolutely terrified, because what you're doing is you're turning off the tap of people who are qualified, who do want to come, who will do it with care. And at the moment, you've just got a black hole, which isn't going to be filled with anyone in the UK, either because they don't want to do it or because they're not getting paid enough to make it worthwhile coming off the benefits to actually do that. So that's not great.
Anyone who has had recent experience of this, of their loved ones being in a care home, and a little bit of that, you realise that the chances of finding what you would call English inverted commas worker there, rather than someone who is in from the Philippines or from Africa or from the Indian subcontinent, are slim.
Yeah.
I mean, really, really slim. And I think that is just the reality. And so, the language is tough. There's no votes to be lost in it, but finding the people to do those jobs is going to be really difficult.
You said he'll welcome criticism from his left flank. There's always a Nadia Whittam tweet, isn't there? And this one says, this step up in anti-migrant rhetoric from the government is shameful and dangerous. Migrants are our neighbours, friends and family. To suggest that Britain risks becoming an island of strangers because of immigration mimics the scaremongering of the far right. And she is both spot on and has walked into exactly what he wants to hear right now, which is, he does want to mimic that language. I mean, that's exactly what we're hearing from him today.
But the proof of the pudding will be in the tasting of it. And, he's got to deliver this substantially. There, and also, as well as those numbers coming down of the number of visas given, there's been a big outflow of this country because of the non-doms policy and maybe other things as well. So, the figures might not look that great when they come out, and he's got to sustain it.
I think they will look great. I think that's the point. I think the figures will already look much better. I mean, we think that we are now looking at half the figure of that 730, which was what he had, when he took office. So the figures will already look great. I think the bigger question is whether in the process of making the figures look good, he's actually left us in a worse place. A less well-off place, whether it's about university students, whether it's about care workers, whether it's about NHS workers, whether it's about the kind of labour that should be helping the economy. That is the unknown bit at the moment.
We will be back tomorrow and we will see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.
The Newsagents. This is a Global Player original podcast.